Yeah. So it's more of the what really happens or what we would like to happen. Good morning. And no, we're not gonna actually go through a budget process here. So just even though I handed out stuff that looks like budgets and it is money, but we're going to talk a little bit about process and so forth. But a little bit of scripture here before we get started. Proverbs 3, 9 and 10. Honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of all your increase, so your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will overflow with new wine. Oh, you didn't get one?
No, there's some others.
Oh, thank you. Good. That's okay. They weren't late yet. Now we're late. So, and then 1 Timothy 6, verse 20. Timothy, guard what was committed to your trust, avoiding the profane and the idle babblings of the contradictions of what is falsely called knowledge. By professing it, some have strayed concerning the faith. And I think this just, I bring these scriptures, and there's many more that would support how we should be good stewards of what God's given us, and that really we understand as God's people that all belongs to God in the first place. And while we're here on earth, we're put in charge of different things at different times. And so in that vein, I want you to, this discussion, it's more maybe be more of a discussion today, not a typical Sunday school lesson, but in light of finances, which I've had the pleasure of serving on the permanent finance committee for the last three years, I guess, going on 4. And those that know me well know I like numbers and I like to get involved with that. But that being said, what really is behind all numbers, whether it's in your household or the city, the governments, churches, are the actions, right? And that's the whole purpose of being a good steward means, minding what you're doing and how you're doing it, having discussions about the value of something being done or not being done. In terms of the church, we're going to focus on that today. Let's start by going a little bit over these guidelines that we have. And I think it's interesting that we call them guidelines because they're guidelines for giving for members. And it's almost like instead of saying this is your mandated amount you should give to the, in this case, the synod is on the top and the classes is on the bottom. And then you have your local congregation needs, right, to be met outside of this. But in reality, a lot of this has to be met in some way because we make promises. For example, ministerial aid, which is the biggest item on this list. And you can see the dollar amount is, $386,000. That was from last year's Synod. And I think it's going to be very similar this year in that category. I do think that we're going to see, based on the reports I've seen, we're going to have a slight increase in our guidelines this coming year. But so is that retirement? That's for those that are done. So but we don't call it retirement because that's a legal problem. It's not a retirement fund. It's because it's benevolent giving this way, and it's There's no fund that was put aside and said, oh, you have this much in your fund, like a 401k or an IRA. So it's not a retirement fund. Although, since you bring that up,
Yeah.
we are planning this. The Permanent Finance Committee is one of the recommendations is to engage in a 403b, 403b9 retirement program with the it's affiliated with the OPC, and it's anybody in NAPARC can join it. It's going to be a voluntary program where pastors can contribute to this, which means that the consistories of each pastor should look at it to say, is this a better vehicle for retirement funding for pastors? We have been woefully behind in this area as a denomination for years, and we don't, based on our studies of the demographics, it's going to be 20 years before we're out of the woods on this. So this fund, which is the biggest item on the budget, we're focusing on it in multiple ways. I think I've talked about this in reports that we've had in the past. The local congregations have to deal with this when they're talking about the pastor's salary. The pastors have to also be looking at ways they can save or buy their residence or some property or something to provide, because housing is always the biggest one single item, right? If they're able to do that. Now, if they're controlled by the salary they get and they don't have any extra funds to do that, there's no way to do that. So yeah, I think the denomination as a whole is well tuned to dealing with this, but it's going to take a while, and we're trying to do it with different ways. Now, as far as someone who applies for that, they have to apply for that money. They don't just automatically get it based on, there's not a formula per se, except that says, well, if you work this many years, you get this much money. You have to submit that you have need of, and that it is a benevolence that's given through this fund. We have modified that application several times since I've been involved. I don't know prior to that how much was done in that regard. Some of the things that were concerning were pastors coming over late in their careers, knowing that they could apply for this after 2 or 3 years. And so that's kind of been shored up in terms of years of service will designate how the formula works.
And some of them also just say, well, they don't get as much.
That's true. And yeah, and we have a provision on there where they can say, I'm getting this, so I don't need this much. Or there may be the opposite, where they have special needs this year because some, health issues, things like that. So they still have that ability, because so we can look at it. Now, what we want is the consistory where they are now residing as a retired pastor to look at that with them and help guide them through the process to make the appropriate application. So I say all that just so you know that this is just, we don't just approve everything just because somebody asked for something. There's a process. They follow the form. Then it goes to classes, and then it goes to Senate eventually.
So is this money in the savings account, getting nothing, or is it in the?
Well, we'll get to that in a minute. It's on the flip side of the page here. But no, it's a good question. No, it's not. It's not really sitting in a fund. So that's why there has to be income coming in. That's why there's a guideline. So we ask people to give to these guidelines, but I will tell you that every congregation is not either able to meet these guidelines. They don't have extra funds. Maybe they're already getting money from the Senate to help support their pastor, because of their situation, the number of members they have, the demographics of how much their people make and where they live. And so we don't have I'm not going to name any congregations about that because I asked the treasurer about that when I got on the committee. He goes, I was told when I came on as treasurer, don't keep track of who doesn't pay and who pays. So there's no list that says, well, all these years this congregation's not been able to pay. But everybody kind of knows, right? Because based on what people say, nobody's really hiding it. But this is a guideline. It's not a mandate. It's not like a property tax bill. It's a guideline. Yes.
Well, I mean, you do go to classes and find out because the questions are available.
Right.
I mean, so we do keep track, just not to stop.
Yeah. Yeah. But we don't have a list of people that are delinquent.
We don't have also, there's a list of, if you go through the abstracts of the classes, you'll find out.
Yeah.
Because if I keep track of that, then the abstracts.
But it won't say how much.
No, it doesn't say, it just says whether they met the guidelines.
Oh, the classes doesn't keep track.
They don't tell you how much.
No, the statistics are reported.
How much you sent in. Yeah. It's in the financials. But somebody would have to go accumulate all that. We don't do that. We don't shake people down. We don't shake congregations down. Now, I will tell you that we will call people that have historically paid all their guidelines late in the year, like now, and say, are you going to do it? Because they're just trying to make a plan for the next year, right? Where are we going to be financially? And not be, we have to be very careful how we ask that question. It's like, we're just asking, are you going to do the same thing you always do? So we can kind of plan, because we have to come up as a committee and say, here's the spending limit for Senate, which it needs to include everything that we're going to have. And so that we might have to ask for the guidelines to be higher or lower, depending on what those answers might be. In the past, it's been pretty regular, but anything can happen, right? Because things change, people lose members. Now, one thing I note on here, you'll notice the number of members from last year was 2744 on the top of the page. That's communicant members. So that's the number we use to determine the guidelines based on communicant members. So all the baptized members, we're not expecting them to put up $280 a person, towards that. It's the communicant members. This year it's going to be 2640. So going into this Senate, we already know that's going to, if the budget's the same, it's going to go up $10 or $12 or maybe 14. Just on that. It had gone up and then it went down, but we had RCLA come in. Now, here's the other thing. It's like, well, some of these congregations come in and they're paying the dues, but they're not able to pay much more than that. So, but we still use this number to come up with our numbers. I think it's almost magical or divine providence that we actually have money in the bank, because we use this formula all the time, but we always have enough money. As you flip the page, you can see that at the end of June last year, there was $402,000, and it's going to probably be slightly less this year, but we haven't determined that yet. We're still, we still have couple months left, but out of that, if you look up at the building fund, it's 107,000. So there's income on building fund. That wasn't from guidelines. That's from repayment of loans. So some money is loaned out to places to purchase a building or do something. That's what that money's for. So that money should always be kept whole in the bank account, because it's not determined to go. I mean, it's not like your operating expenses for ministerial aid, for example, or student aid, or there are some ongoing expenses, but administratively, we don't have hired people except for that endowment fund officer, and then they're not payroll. It's just a 1099 arrangement. So one of my questions always is like, how much money should we have on reserve? Do we have too much? And because I think in the past, maybe they came up short some time ago. I think we tend to say, well, no, let's not take it down just to keep the guidelines lower. But I might argue that maybe you should at some point, you need to know what is that number you need? Do you need 6 months worth of ministerial aid? Because those are things that people are waiting for that to come every month, right? So you wouldn't want to be short there, or if the tuition needs to be paid for a student under care of classes, or anything like benevolence or missions that are have pastors that are being supported. Those are monthly obligations that we want to make sure that we meet them. And let's say there's, God forbid, some kind of national disaster and all our churches get affected somehow. We have enough money to go a while to at least have time to adjust and figure out what we're going to do. We don't want to just like, boom, boom, we're done. We didn't have any reserve. So I guess we could use the building fund and borrow from it, but technically we probably shouldn't. So we did create a savings account. Oh, there was no savings account. The endowment fund's a whole different thing, and I'll talk about it in a minute. But the savings account, we had this $400,000. Why do we have it all in checking? It's not getting any interest. So now I think it's getting like 3.5% or 4% in a savings type of account. So it's still pretty liquid, so we can get it out anytime.
That's smarter than taking that.
Yeah. So, but that's what they should at least have the building fund in there.
No, they don't have anything.
What's
He said you're gonna be a job. I'm just saying, you gotta have enough money to
Look.
make it work.
yeah, and by the way, since you mentioned the job, the treasurer gets a stipend of. Do we raise it to $2,000? I think. Yeah. So does the clerk. It's like, and I can tell you the treasurer, since I've been involved, and maybe it's my fault, so it's like he's got more jobs now because there's more things to keep track of than there were. Does anybody have any questions about any of these funds, the guidelines? Like, does it not make sense where it goes? Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't know that we did some Greenville Presbyterian, is that one of the seminaries that you do?
Yeah.
But yes.
Yes. All these seminaries that are listed here.
The Westminster Biblical, I don't really, that's much.
Well, it's been approved last time.
So,
It doesn't mean it's going to be approved again, but
but in other words, all these seminaries that are ones that are okay for any students to go.
yeah.
We think they're okay.
Yeah. And then, so we have a committee that investigates those
Okay.
and periodically visits those and asks questions and what are they teaching there? And so, and we're actually, somebody, maybe Ryan, you can speak to that we're going to investigate, or we're going to promote getting more students out of some of these seminaries. So we're going to spend some travel money for some of our elders or pastors to go and recruit students to become ministers in the RCUS, right? From some of these seminaries even.
I think I was probably.
I mean, even though we're connected like this way, it's one thing to show your face or to, because we need pastors. So, and we're not talking about spending tens of thousands of dollars, just some, traveling expenses.
So what's this, you're looking at Westminster. Okay,
Oh, no.
okay, I thought when you said it was still. Okay, I see.
I know we want to go ahead.
So the deal on these ones, right, because these are the guidelines, and some churches sometimes will put, they'll designate funds for certain.
Yeah, some
They don't, they purposely, in some places.
some churches will not support some of these things 100% or at all.
So my question is,
And that's a
does
choice.
the treasurer send this amount in no matter what people give in? In other words, or do they allocate what the income, does it match what churches spend on that guy?
Good question. The money comes from the congregation, right? The consistory, the treasurer sends the money in and has to designate where it's going. So if they're tracking how people are giving it towards those things, but we have not experienced that right here, Rob, right? We don't have people that say, oh, I'm only given for my guidelines for this. But other bodies have, and then they have to follow it through, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Because there's two things. I found this out. I didn't realize there's some churches that actually they have offerings that they say, okay, here's the offering for, and they'll name the guy.
And then they send that.
And whatever comes in on that offering, that's what they say.
Yeah.
And it may or be less or maybe more.
They can do that.
We don't do it.
It's a guideline.
We don't do it that way. The consistory just basically takes all the money from the different fund and we just allocate.
Yeah.
We just pay our guidelines regardless of, unless somebody literally
But no,
says
but
it's
churches don't do that.
designated.
Not every church does that. It's a guideline. It's not a mandate.
I thought every church is required to do this.
I believe the way we do it is better, but that's my opinion. You know,
You say we have these.
Ebenezer. When I say that, yeah. That's why I think this should just be a budget, and this is what you need to send in. And it's like, if you can't do it, you can't do it. That's okay. We'll move on. We'll figure it out. But the dues, if you want to get reimbursed for your elders and your pastors to go for their travel reimbursement, you have to have paid your dues. That's really that's the only stipulation. And if you don't pay your dues, well, nothing's going to happen either. You're just not going to be able to get that reimbursement for travel. Because 90%, 80 or 90% of the dues goes to travel for the synod. This is $40,000 or $50,000, depending on where we go and who goes and how they decide to travel. There's all kinds of factors there, but it always averages between 40 and 50,000, somewhere in there. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why you don't fit California.
I mean, it would probably cost more. Yeah.
Because I looked at that first Westminster, I was gonna say, we used to do this Westminster, and I was thinking, that was not happening.
No. Okay. So
Can I make one comment?
yeah.
I think classes guidelines is very interesting and encouraging that our biggest expense is missions. Rightly so.
Yeah.
You know, and that's two churches involved. The mission folks.
Yeah.
And Senate matches those funds.
Right.
So that's what's being spent in Western classes on missions. Not totally, because of the works themselves, but that's what the churches do. I think that's good. And that's up quite a bit from what it was. Well,
Mhm.
double here just the last couple of years.
Yeah. No, good comment. Yeah, we are mission focused. Mission should be work of classes to begin with, I believe. So I think a lot of people agree.
Well,
Local oversight. Yeah.
We have to pick for though, which is, we usually get two. Lately, we only been like some years that we did pick.
Well, we just pick them for the sake of making it come out. We would pick 6 out of 8 or 6 out of 14 or whatever. This adds up to how much we think we can do today. But it wasn't because we were not going to end up paying the whole thing. Right. Yeah. I mean, the problem I see with it is somebody could say, well, I don't agree with what Senate's doing with that. So we don't think. And where the Senate approved whatever it was, this is what the committee went through a process. They met all year. They discussed it. They investigated. They made a recommendation. The Senate voted for it. But that's what I think. I don't think it should be. I don't even like the word guideline in this term, but that's just personally. This is what it is. It's a guideline. Huh?
Based off your budget.
Right.
I mean, that's what the document.
Yeah. But it's,
And we know that, in some of these, you have monthly draws on it. You can't wait till the end of the year to pay it,
right.
because then it has to go out.
Like the mission works where they're paying a pastor, the ministerial aid, we always have to have that money available.
Same on water.
Yeah. 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 You got utilities and you got to pay your salaries and any other questions about the guidelines? I mean, every one of these committees, you could get into the details. But those are in the abstracts. You can always read all those reports and you'll get most all the information you need. Is there a question? So yeah, all the classes, they have their own budgets, their own guidelines. They're separate, but a lot of their work is joint with the overall body of the denomination, where they'll ask the Senate to match on mission works, especially. Ministerial aid comes out of the Senate. Now we'll talk a little bit about the endowment fund. Endowment fund,
Eric, just so this, to kind of keep it in mind, right? These guidelines are
per communicant member.
So depending on households, you could have, you add those two numbers together, you're looking at what, $397.
Yeah, that's right.
So now, a typical household, if you have two people in the household, you've got two teenagers at home, that's 4 times that amount from what you're sort of thinking.
That's right. If they're,
And I think sometimes, we think for communicate, everybody kind of thinks, well, that's
per family.
a household, and it's not a
Yeah.
household. I wish we switched per
And,
household.
and we have statistics on how many families in every church, but then how many, it's always a lesser number than the communicant members, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah, if we switched to head of household, we would.
Could be. Yeah. Yeah. You just need to know what we're talking about. We're talking about per person that's community member. Yeah. Confirmed children would count. Yeah.
So if you've got two high school, it's you plus your two high school. That number.
Which is nothing compared to all the other expenses of those children, but it's something, right? It adds up. So it's always it's a game of numbers in terms of if your membership goes down, which we lost a whole congregation, Redeemer in Minnesota, that's 100 members. That's basically what happened here. So that's what we're already faced with, an increase right there if we don't do anything else differently.
We kind of got offset with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
They're probably not able to contribute
no, but it's-
the same level that maybe the average, right? But, do you not, no, they have the record. This is all in the abstracts. They know what it is. So this is what they're supposed to pay based on what they turned in, their number of members. That's how they know. There's no bill.
I would never pay it unless it was the invoice. This invoice is not getting paid.
Well, anyway, a little bit about the endowment fund. It's at the end of the year, and I don't know what it's done with the market. That's crazy. The last 3 or 4 months, it was $2.4 million. That most of that money, a good portion of that money was given like almost 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And then it's grown and there's been more money come into it. But that endowment fund, the rules of it, we can take 4.5% of the 5-year average of the balance. So if you take the last 5-year average is only 1.9 million something. So we can take 77,000 to offset the guidelines, which the guidelines that I just showed you are take that into account because there was money from the previous that was used in ministerial aid. Because the sole purpose of the endowment fund to begin with was ministerial aid, but also the rules of the endowment fund allow for other usage of the money, but principally it's going to be used for offsetting the cost of ministerial aid. So it's working. That's why it's encouraging. It's working. There's argument that like we shouldn't take any of that money. We should let it keep rolling, which would probably grow faster. But then we would have to charge everybody what, $20 to $40 more per community member. So these are the questions and wrestles that we had. Yeah.
You had a young ministerial staff who can do what you just said, roll it. But you have older.
Yeah.
You're gonna have.
Well, you saw the budget for that. It's over 300,000.
Yeah.
So, and so we're working on both ends. We're trying to shore up the current pastors and their retirement fund, by creating other opportunities and making sure everybody's aware that part of your supplying or taking care of your pastor is not just while they're here. They're just like everybody else here, right? So how are you going to take care of yourself? And if we know this much, we can do this much, then that's my thinking is like, well, let's do what we can. We do a little bit here and a little bit there. Pretty soon we'll get that thing closed. And maybe someday we won't even need this budget guideline, or it'd be very small, right? Very small. And we can use that money for missions and other things. And that's the kind of vision of the endowment fund. Eventually, if we plan well, eventually we'll be able to use that money for other things to grow the church. Pretty much out of time, but I did give you this. This sheet here shows the funds, the ins and outs of the funds. And the funny thing about it to me is that sometimes the funds grow, even though they requested this money, the money came in, they didn't need the money. Now, what do we do? What does the committee do with that? Are we supposed to put the money back in reserves? Well, we do save it because we don't give it back. But you could argue that if our surplus of funds is so much, maybe we should be using some of that to offset the annual costs but then we come back and double up the next year because we were off, it's a balancing game. And it's the same locally. We have the same thing. It's just different categories. Yes.
We had $30,000 in unallocated disbursements. What does that mean? Well, 29,700. Unallocated.
I saw that when I printed this out, and I said, oh, I don't even remember what that was.
Well, we don't know if it's unallocated.
It's an in case.
No, it got dispersed.
What was it allocated?
Huh?
What was it allocated?
I don't know. I have to ask the treasurer now because
Did he allocate it? I mean, is there an unallocated? I guess I'm trying to figure out, if you ask him, how does he know what it was allocated to?
well, and there was no income, right? So how did we even have it, right?
I was okay with it being on the income side, we just didn't allocate it.
Yeah, but
we dispersed it. and didn't allocate
but how did we even have it? How did we have?
it. Just talking about, right? So let's spend money, something for this, spend money, and you
Yeah,
slush money.
I don't know.
So what you're saying,
I'll try to find out for you.
What you say is probably
but I don't know what that would be.
But you're dispersing it, you should be.
Because
It's a gamble.
the dues usually takes care of all administrative stuff like insurance and things you can't foresee that might change.
I'm okay with money coming in and they didn't know where to put it, so it goes into an unallocated. I didn't know where to put it. Somebody sends a check and they didn't say anything to it, and I don't do it, it's by the bank, it's unallocated. Disbursement.
No, I said I'll find out. I cannot answer it.
I'm not saying that you have to answer right now, that's just.
No.
I'm just curious. But that was 2 years ago.
Well, I'll be seeing a new report tomorrow at our mini budget meeting with the president and the treasurer, and that'll be my first question.
I think it's that terminology thing, he's gonna say unallocated, but there's gonna be something
Yeah.
that means something to him, or it doesn't mean anything to us. This doesn't.
Well, that's what we do in business, you have this ladies
Yeah,
category.
exactly.
It's not a list, you might be able to pull a list, but they're not gonna put it there, and then they can say,
Good.
they have not arbitrary, but, random categories like, well, this, and this, but not specific.
Because we had the tricentennial, that would have been like, I would have thought, well, maybe, but we have a category for that. So. And that, now that's gone.
Miscellaneous is a category allocated, because unless we listen miscellaneous. This is unallocated.
Well, I want to see the items that were used to get to 29,744 or whatever it was. There's got to be some items there. I could probably dig the checking account statement for some time that period before, but Randy might be able to just tell me.
Should be able to print out what was out.
Yeah, I'm sure he has it.
Now, one thing, Eric,
Yeah.
we went out to our kitchen part today, we found the food and cooking, the last time we held Senate, 25 years ago? 2010, we held
It's a
Senate.
nice little book, and,
Dan put together the book, and we still, and it was buried back in our kitchen,
I couldn't throw it.
so we're not going to, so it's
So we
there.
have Senate, we have a whole thing, you don't remember what we did.
In this kitchen here?
Yes.
In my kitchen.
In our personal
We
kitchen
used
room,
to keep one.
we kept one,
Well, I have the one that we could use again.
so,
It's in fine order.
yes, I was gonna say, we're not throwing that away.
I would never do that.
But it's.
Are you
did a good job cooking.
are you thinking we should offer
No,
the,
that's not what I'm saying.
I'm saying, if we have to do Senate again, we have, I mean, you know, remember one thing we made. Everybody here in this group contributed to it. There's a name with every recipe. Everybody in this group has their name on it.
But it tells everything about what we have.
And exactly how to make it too.
It was very
We
deep.
need
enough.
those to give to the various wives.
okay, we're gonna wrap this up. Let's close in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day. Thank you for the gifts you give us each day. We ask, Lord, that you would make us good stewards of what we've been given. May we do all these things to your honor and glory, and further the spreading of your word, of the gospel, of the good news of Jesus Christ our Lord. In his name we pray these things.